African experience.
Mr. Speaker, let me give an example. I live, Mr. Speaker, in Kano, where there is a very populated city with almost 70% of common people. I can see I live in Hotoro in my area where they are charging common people 1,000 bill every month. But if you put that meter to a common man, he cannot use electric iron in his house at all. He cannot use electric cooker in his house. He cannot use a deep freezer in his house. Because if I can remember in my house, Mr. Speaker, they sent me bill of 15,000 naira monthly. But as they put me that meter now, I buy that recharge of 65,000 monthly in my house. So if we have people in here can afford to pay that money, there is a problem to a common man.
Member of Nigeria's House of Representatives, Mohammed Gudaji, representing the Kazaure, Roni, Gwiwa, and Kwashi Federal Constituency of Jigawa State in northwest Nigeria. Many are only often interested in the way and manner the lawmaker expresses himself on the floor of the House without paying much attention to his message, especially now that he has become an internet sensation with his mannerisms and uncommon use of the English language in canvassing his points.
Somebody who's a 15,000 salary, how if you put him that meter, you stop him using iron, you stop him using electric cooker, you stop him using, because if you use that, they will charge him 20, 30,000. His salary will remain in the distribution company. I can see they are fighting in my area with the people because when they put that meter in the house, they call that meter Barewa because it's running very quickly, Mr. Speaker. Ask the people of your area in Bauchi, they will witness you that. They call that meter Barewa. So if you put that meter to a common man, you stop common man for using air conditioning and the others if we can afford to buy. And that people that are doing welding on the street, how are they going to use that prepaid meter, my leader?
And so it was on April 17, 2018, when Mohammed Gudaji was drawing the attention of the country to the cost of electricity with prohibitive tariffs that could eventually cripple small-scale enterprises, including factories, if the power sector is allowed to continue on this path. The debate was on the bill to rightly criminalize estimated billing by electricity distribution companies in the country. But the lawmaker made a point that perhaps only few discerning minds could understand. This is a Straight Talk. I am Tyav here in Abuja, and we welcome all our viewers in Nigeria and around the world to the program. You can also join me in the conversation on my online platforms on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn, with all the handles now on the webpage of our partners, MediaDimensions.live. Nigeria has what the power sector industry calls the multi-year tariff order, MYTO, for the systemic increase of electricity tariff. And just like the situation with the petroleum industry, Nigerians are wrongly made to believe that the higher they pay for electricity, the more available it will become. This is what we know. The Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, that is empowered by Section 32, subsection D of the Electric Power Sector Reform EPSR Act 2005 to ensure that the prices charged by licensees are fair to customers and sufficient to allow the licensees to finance their activities and obtain reasonable profit for efficient operations, explains on its website that the multi-year tariff order is, quote, incentive-based regulation that seeks to reward performance above certain benchmarks, reduces technical and non-technical or commercial losses, and leads to cover, recovery, and improved performance standards from all industry operators. The purpose of the MYTO is to set cost-reflective tariffs which will allow the power sector to be properly funded and functional. It provides a 15-year tariff path for the MESI, that is the Nigerian electricity supply industry, with limited minor reviews each year in the light of changes in a limited number of parameters such as inflation, interest rates, exchange rates, and generation capacity, and major reviews every 5 years when all of the inputs are reviewed with stakeholders, end of quote. It is clearly all about the licensees, talking of the power companies, especially the electricity distribution companies, such that except in the Enabling Act, there is no mention of the electricity consumer in the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission's MYTO framework, not even in the 5-point objectives of the order. The understanding is that every year the electricity consumer in Nigeria is to pay more for electricity amidst major tariff hikes every 5 years, with reviews of over 45% in April 2015 and another 45% in February 2016, where the consumer no longer has to pay the fixed charges, but then different amounts of tariffs depending on which part of the country he or she resides or does business. Under the 2015-2024 multi-year tariff order, the major review, which is to be done every 5 years, is due in 2020. But then power companies in the country are already clamoring and lobbying desperately for hikes in electricity tariffs of up to 61.5% this time around.
We have not faithfully implemented the MYTO 2015, including the necessary reviews that were supposed to be done. You know, in that, after, you know, it was a 10-year rollout, 10-year tariff that was rolled out back then. Every year there will be a new tariff. Every year there will be a new tariff. But now we have skipped 2 minor reviews and 1 major review. None of this was done. You understand? So, and the impact is that there will be a shortfall in what is supposed to be generated. One of the biggest challenges we are facing is the cost of buying the energy from the distribution, from embed. You know, as it is now, we are buying at nearly more than 16 naira per kilowatt. Meanwhile, we are selling it to customers at an average of 27, 28 naira. Clearly, there is a disparity. There is a shortfall. And then nobody's accounting for it. So as it is now, we're operating at a loss.
So the gas suppliers are so frustrated with us. They keep calling, please take more gas, take more gas. And we're like, NCC say we cannot come on the grid because NCC cannot take our power. So the gas suppliers are like, I can't keep this gas waiting for you. I will need to sell it out. So we're in this conundrum. And power, as you know, we cannot be bottled. Otherwise, like this, my bottled water, I would have bottled all these stranded power and put in a shop right next and different supermarkets. Nigerians can go there and buy it.
It is obvious that what the electricity consumer in Nigeria is paying for is not the electricity supply, but the cost of gas. This simply means that As the prices of gas continue to rise in the international market, so will there be the demand by the power companies for an increase in electricity tariffs in the country. The only option available for Nigeria and its government now is to subsidize the cost of gas to be able to maintain the current electricity tariffs, or what will be considered reasonable or affordable tariffs. And this is what the government tries to do with the so-called intervention funds, or supposed bailout of the power companies. This much, the then Minister of Petroleum Resources, Dizaini Alison Madweke, admitted on September 19, 2014, when she announced the Nigerian government's first bailout of 213 billion naira for the new power companies, barely a year after the sale of the country's power assets to the private investors. And I quote, "This will ensure that the cost of the electricity for ordinary consumers continues to be at affordable levels," end of quote. Thereafter came the 701 billion naira payment assurance scheme in 2017 under the President Muhammadu Buhari administration.
Before now, what was happening was that the gas suppliers could not supply gas because they were not paid by the GENCOs. The GENCOs complained that they were not paid by the DISCOs. So what the government did was put aside this 701 billion naira, which is not a grant, but it's like a kind of reserve, that if for any reason you supply gas to a GENCO and the GENCO is unable to pay you, we will pay on behalf of GENCO until the GENCO is able to pay us. If GENCO, if the generating company supplies the distribution company, and because they are not able to be paid by the DISCO, they cannot pay GENCO, we also guarantee it. And that is what has led to the relative increase in the power situation.
You had Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company, which is supposed to be buying from all the GENCOs and transmitting, and they have take or pay agreement. So if you generate and transmission line is unable to transmit, you are still supposed to pay the GENCO. And so the GENCO can go into an unholy agreement. As far as the transmission line is not generating, it's assuming that it's generating, so you keep paying. So the bills that have come before NBET is too huge.
If you recall, there was a power sector recovery plan that was launched last year, and even the government has gone ahead to even start implementing. As a matter of fact, we were told by the Minister of Power that the 701 billion power assurance scheme was a fallout from that power sector recovery plan, part of the implementation of that PSRP. However, recently, we seem not to hear anything about the power sector recovery plan. And we asked several questions, what is happening? First and foremost, I want to put it on record that the operators were not consulted when that plan was put together. So we read about it in the media. We requested for a copy to be sent to us so that we can make our inputs. And we were told that the program is already being implemented.
We have requested the Minister of Power, Works and Housing, Babatunde Raji Fashola, to speak on the issues in the industry. But since 2017, he has not seen any reason to do so, perhaps for the obvious fact that he has been overwhelmed by what he met in the industry, and then the simple truth that he does not have the needed plan to fix the country's power sector. As we speak, most of the money or liquidity in the power sector is spent on paying for gas supplies, which ends up enriching a few persons and perhaps those in government who have continued to promote the trade and the corruption associated with it, like was the case with fuel subsidy in the country. It is a fact that the gas supply cabal is holding the country hostage at gunpoint and will not let go as they feed fat and make the public dry for the only sources of power generation Nigeria regrettably relies on today.
Why will Nigeria produce gas and use that same gas into energy? The world is moving. We must take our gas into gas technology and bring more value, fertilizer production, nanotechnology. Gas is not meant for energy anymore. And that's why, because I used to be in the oil and gas industry, and I used to manage gas turbines in terms of the mechanical integrity of the plants. If we shift from gas to hydro and to solar, they will be out of business. So you continue to sell gas to power. And once you do gas to power, you'll be a slave forever. Nigeria has no business to take our gas to energy. Not at all. You can't sustain running a gas-fired turbine 1 year without spending almost the cost of its installation. So the capex is high, the opex is high. The capital investment outlay is high, the operating cost is prohibitive. And so go back to our hydro that has never failed. It's renewable.
You know, in the petroleum subsector, there was a time we had the issue of subsidy. Nigeria has asked the question of what is truly the cost of producing PMS and petroleum products. So in the power sector, we need to do what we call an holistic review based on global indices of transparency of what is the true cost without ambiguity of delivering 1 megawatt.
Here is what the problem actually is with the country's electricity sector. Nigeria today is one of the few unproductive countries in the world that depends almost entirely on gas supplies to generate its electricity. And this is what Russia, that is reportedly with the highest gas reserves in the world, does not even do because of the high cost of gas, which will unavoidably be transferred to the electricity consumers. As we speak, Nigeria depends on gas for 85% of the electricity generated in the country, and only 15% on hydroelectric power sources. Though with the incremental power drive of the President Buhari administration, there are claims that gas is now accountable for 74% and hydro 26%, which is still one of the very highest in the world. Proceeds from payments for gas supplies and the wealth this is creating for a few persons in the power sector and the government perhaps explains why neither the power generating companies nor the distribution companies in Nigeria are interested in the country sourcing for electricity from other sources other than gas and perhaps hydro for more beneficial, cost-effective and reliable energy mix that would lead to cheaper electricity tariffs.
I think some of these things are already in place now. Investments in alternative sources, solar and all that. I think the government, NRC has given licenses for people who are interested. I think it's open. Any government or individual who feels that he wants to invest in it, there is a procedure through NAC that you can apply and get a license for it. I don't think there's a problem.
Are we investing in those?
If we're investing in solar?
Yes, the power mix, for instance.
Well, the government is promoting it a lot, and a lot of donor agencies are funding that. I'm aware of that. USAID, Power Africa, a lot of these companies are
standalone for small communities. So that's what we're seeing.
Well, I looked at NBET's website and I saw that NBET has signed 14 solar PPAs. And if that be the case, they are on-grid plants. Of course, you know, on-grid plants are plants that NBET signs into PPA and all of this. So most of them, from my investigation, are meant to be on the grid.
And before we break down what happens in Nigeria for you, let's give you the facts across the world, including in developing countries where the governments there have ensured that their reliance on gas for power generation does not rise above 50%. In Africa, for instance, in neighboring Ghana, that celebrated 10 years of uninterrupted power supply in 2013, imports 1% of its energy. But that country depends on hydropower plants for 68% of its electricity supply and only 31% on thermal plants. South Africa, which is Africa's second largest economy, depends on coal for 69% of its power supply and only 2.9% on gas and 14.8% on crude oil, and then 2.5% on nuclear energy. Africa's second largest oil producer, that is Angola, uses only 12% of gas for electricity generation, with 64% of supply coming from hydroelectric power plants. In East Africa, the countries there rely more on hydroelectric plants than supply from thermal projects. Kenya gets 59% of its supply from hydro, Uganda 65%, Tanzania 58%, and then Rwanda 59%. And elsewhere, Brazil gets only 7.9% of electricity supply from natural gas and 76.9% from hydropower projects. India depends on coal for 59.8% of its national supply, with South Korea relying on only 17% of gas, 13% of nuclear energy, 29% of coal, and 42% of petroleum. The Russian Federation, that has the world's biggest, largest natural gas reserves, uses 56% of that for electricity generation, with coal accounting for 15% and renewable sources 10%. The economy of the United States of America, which is the largest in the world, is powered by only 29% of gas, as it depends on 11% of renewable sources, 14% of coal, 9% of nuclear energy, and 37% of petroleum. In China, the world's second largest economy, 58% of the power is generated from coal, 20% from hydro, 9% from wind, 2% from nuclear energy, and only 4% from gas. For Germany, it is 23.7% of gas for power generation, 11% for coal, 13.1% from renewable sources, and 34.6% from mineral oil. The United Kingdom relies 20.8% on nuclear energy, 14.6% on wind, and 39.9% on gas, while Japan is powered by 30.3% on coal and 43.2% on liquefied natural gas. The United Arab Emirates, UAE, that today depends on 60.6% of gas for its electricity generation, plans to reduce this to 38% by 2050 to rely more on clean and renewable energy, with the target at 44%. While Saudi Arabia, which is one of the major oil producers in the world, relies on only 45% of its gas, some of the countries that still behave like Nigeria are the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Arab Republic of Egypt, that still rely on 60% and 69% of gas, respectively, for electricity generation. In Nigeria, power generation that feeds the infamous national transmission grid is from 26 thermal and hydropower plants that are in operation across the country, with a total combined installed capacity of about 13,000 megawatts of electricity today. The companies that bought over or leased these national assets in the wake of the privatization exercise were given the business to manage the 26 grid-connected generating plants across the country. Out of the 26 grid-connected generating plants in Nigeria, only 3 are not gas-powered, and these are the Kanji, Jebba, and Shiroro power plants with combined installed capacity of 1,938 megawatts. And then the 30 megawatts from the NESCO plant in Barkin-Ladi local government area of Plateau State in north-central Nigeria. The hydroelectric power plants are to produce a total of 1,968 megawatts out of the about 13,000 megawatts installed capacity in the country, which is just about 16% of the power that can be generated in the entire country.
Key priorities including better energy mix through solar and hydro technologies. I am glad to see that after many years of limbo, Mambila Power Project has taken off.
There are hardly any investments in major solar power plants projects in Nigeria. But then the country currently has 2 gigantic hydro power plant projects, both conceived in 1982 during the administration of President Shehu Shagari, that are under construction after a series of abandonment over the last 4 decades. These are the multi-billion-dollar Mambila power plant located in Taraba State, northeast Nigeria, that is to generate 3,050 megawatts, and then the $1.2 billion Zungeru power plant project in Niger State, in north-central Nigeria, that is to generate 700 megawatts of electricity on completion. If and when the Mambila and Zungeru hydro power projects are eventually delivered in 2023 and 2020 respectively as proposed, they would add up to producing only 31% of the country's power generation. But that is, should there be no new power plants powered by gas turbines. I am walking through a solar garden in Jos Plateau State, north-central Nigeria, that produces at the moment 1 megawatt of electricity from 104 solar panels. It's actually a prototype, but then it has the potentials of producing about 15,000 megawatts of electricity for Nigeria within a period of 4 years using solely local content.